Today we are going to practice solving quadratics by completing the square. This will be a guided practice. Okay. So remember, to complete the square, first we start off by isolating the x's on one side, and also we can divide by the greatest common factor. So on our first equation, our first step is going to be to move the 5 to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. I have x squared minus 8x, and then I have the equals negative 5 on the other side. Now, where do we get the term that's going to go right here? So whatever I add on this side, I'm also going to add on this side. So remember, to get that value, and it's always going to be plus a number, and whatever I add to one side, I'm going to add to the other. So the work is to take half of the b value and square it. So we are going to take half of the b value, and whatever we get, we're going to square it. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to put that 16 in both of my blanks. So now we have created that perfect square on the left. So the perfect square is going to be that half of the b. So it's basically the square root of a and the square root of c, and you get x minus 4, because we're going to keep the sign of whatever was in front of b. So one of the other ways to look at it is half of this value gives us a number that goes in there. Okay, and on the other side we have negative 15 plus 16, we get a positive 11. Now we're going to solve by the square root method. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. We cannot take the square root of 11, so we can leave it as plus or minus the square root of 11. One more step is going to be to add 4 to both sides. So I'm going to add 4, and I'm going to write it in front of our plus or minus. So our official answer for this first problem is 4 plus or minus the square root of 11. Okay, go ahead and pause this video here and try following those steps for the second problem. Okay, go ahead and check your work here. So we ended up adding a 36 to both sides to make this a perfect square. We got that number by taking half of the b value and squaring it. This is a perfect square of x plus 6 squared equals 32. So then we took the square root of both sides. This one had an extra step because we could simplify the square root of 32, which we've worked on before. Broke it up into 16 and 2 because the square root of 16 is 4. And here is my final answer. Okay, let's go ahead and try that again. We're going to work on the left side. So to complete the square, one of the first things is that I can divide by my greatest common factor. So in this first problem, I can actually divide everything by negative 2. Then I'm left with x squared plus 6x plus 6 equals 0. So this is not factorable, which is why I'm going to complete the square. First, I'm going to get my x's on one side and my constant on the other. So then I have x squared plus 6x, and I have the equals negative 6. Now remember, whatever I add to one side, I'm going to add to the other side. Well, how do we find out what number goes there? We do 6 divided by 2 squared. 6 over 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9, so I'm going to go ahead and add 9 to both spots. I have created a perfect square on the left. X, and then half of 6 was 3. Remember, if I squared that out, I get this trinomial right here, and equals to a positive 3. Next step is to take the square root of both sides. Since I can't take the square root of 3, I'm going to leave it as plus and minus the square root of 3. Last step is to subtract 3 from both sides. So this problem does have two solutions. It has negative 3 plus the square root of 3, and it also has negative 3 minus the square root of 3. So you can write that as two different answers, or you might see it written with the plus or the minus. So go ahead and pause this video here and try following those steps and answering the second question. Okay. Go ahead and check your work. First, I divided everything by 4, but then I had to move the c value to the other side, okay? So once I had the x's by myself, I can complete the square by taking half of b and squaring it. So I added 1 to both sides. This became the perfect square of x plus 1 squared equals to 3. Took the square root, subtracted 1, and this is my final answer. Okay, our last one for the day. So again, first rule is to divide by a greatest common factor if it has one. So then I have x squared plus 4x plus 28 equals 0. Now I'm going to isolate my x's by moving the 28 to the other side. Now again, because I know I'm going to add something to both sides, I'm going to go ahead and put a plus blank on both sides. Well, what number is going to go in there? I'm going to take half of b and I'm going to square it. 4 over 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4, and that's the number that I'm going to put in both of the blanks. So I added 4 to both sides. I have now created a perfect square on the left. I get x plus 2 squared equals negative 24. Next up is to take the square root of both sides. So this one will not have a real solution. This one is going to have an imaginary solution. So let's break up 24 into numbers that I can take the square root of. I'm going to break it up into the negative 1 so I can factor out the I. I'm going to break it up into a 4 and a 6. Why did I choose these numbers? Because I can factor out, I can take the square root of 4 and the negative 1. And that becomes x plus 2 equals plus or minus 2i. And the square root of 6 is going to stay on the inside. The last step is to subtract 2 on both sides, and I'm going to write that in front of the plus and minus. So x equals negative 2 plus and minus 2i square root of 6. Go ahead and pause this video, and this is our last question. Try working out the second question on your own. Okay, go ahead and check your work. So first we factored out a 3, okay? And then I moved this 12 to the other side. Now how did I find this value that goes here? I took half of b and I squared it. Half of b squared equals a positive 9. Now this becomes a perfect square of x minus 3 squared. Then I took the square root of a negative 3. Now I can factor out the negative by putting an I on the outside, by factoring out the imaginary number. Okay, then I move the 3 to the other side. Hopefully this video helped practice how to complete the square, and have a great day.